In today's video, I'm going to be not cheating. The idea here is pretty simple. I'm going to be playing a game called Rust Legacy, and in this case, Rust Legacy has a anti-cheat program that's dubious at best. It responds to ordinary server problems like lag spikes by claiming that you have cheated and doing what they call a kick violation or whatever. Usually it'll put it under the general category of fly hacks or rock glitching, although it never mentions rock glitching. I'm currently in a location, as you can see through the side there, that I can see through partially. That's a visual clipping glitch kind of thing that indicates many things about the game engine, Unity, that are, I'll just say, dubious at best again. So anyway, we're going to hit the duck down key, the control key on my keyboard, and we go down a little further. You can see that I'm between two rocks, and this is a pathway it's rather well known about, no secret here. And I'm going to log out of the game and log back in. That means I'll turn into a sleeper that's laying down on the ground. Some of you may be aware of the fact that in the video game Rust, the current version, experimental, or whatever they're calling it this week, you start the game in a laying down position. Most games don't do that because of the mechanic of getting up and getting down is similar to crawling on your belly for sneak points in another video game. But they did that for many reasons. But I want to point out that in Rust Legacy, the one I'm playing from 2013, 14, and 15, it doesn't have the ability to have you crawl on the ground because they didn't implement that using the game engine Unity for that year for whatever reason. It doesn't have a mechanic where you have the ability to lay down flat, which would be below crouch level. It would be called crawl function. So what we're going to do is hit the escape key. I'm going to hit disconnect. And then I'm going to go back into it. I think it's a Rustmas survival here. We'll try this. And we'll see how far I get. Now, I want you to pay attention to the screen itself, where it says clear for fly hack. And I want you to listen to the sound it makes through the speakers on my computer of what it's doing to me during the login. This is an unusual thing, and it's done as a patch over the top of the anti-hack toys and anti-cheat utilities. And again, every other place, it just has me wake up here. See, everything's fine, and then it fly hacks me itself. And then it says clear to fly hack, and either puts me under here or it doesn't. Now, occasionally, it actually puts me inside of the stone. It actually causes the fly hack, and then says you have been cleared of fly hack. And it's under Derp Team Games or something. So let's get out of here and take a look around. And if anybody didn't know about it, not a big secret, there's a little crawl space there. I want to point out a couple of things. In a game that's ostensibly about survival, the survival and crafting environment, the crafting mechanics are going to be limited because you can't get that fine-grained. You're not going to sit there with a pocket knife or a chisel or a spoke shave and make things. But when it comes to the basics of crawl underneath an overhang rock, put a fire pit down, and hide from the rainfall and wind, yes, a survival game, if it was called that, it would be logical, normal, and perfectly innocent for a person to do this. But me sitting under here, logging out and logging back in, is just as liable to get me a one-day ban, even though that's literally something you do, not in a game, but in reality. This would be your hiding spot. Pro tip, if you're trying to survive, don't act like you're in a video game, apparently, at all. But yeah, you would sit down here, you'd put up pieces of wood to act as a barrier for the bears, and you'd put down your sleeping bag if you could make one, and your fire pit, and be happy. And this would qualify as shelter, because it's a freaking stone. It's a boulder. But again, we disconnect, then we log back in, and we'll see if it does this. I could go around the map and do this repeatedly. I've already done it in one other spot that I consider my little secret hidey spot that I always log out as, so I'm a sleeper under there. But I found out that if I'm in just the right position, I clip right into the rock. Now, the solutions you actually do in a game, and I've actually written parts of video games just to solve this problem, is you make it to where if you clip into a rock, it kills you, and it puts you X number of feet away. Wait for it. Bam. And it doesn't let you clip into the rock. At least this one does some of the mechanics to keep you from clipping to the rock. I mean, I'm obviously able to see through the rock, which might be an advantage, but it's not letting me clip into the rock here. It's actually holding me fast. And I can move forward and get out of there, and I won't be able to go back in as far. I suppose I could try to put a bag in there, but that would get me screwed over. I want to point out that trying to put a bag under here, depending on how aggressive the anti-cheat functions are, it'll immediately accuse you of fly hacking or rock glitching and take your bag away and won't give you any of the cloth back, instead of just not letting you place it under here. And the thing is, the problem with this is that even if you showed up here and like, oh, I'll just hide under a rock and log out, which would be a rational thing to do. The game devs at the time, and certainly the current crop of game admins, simply presume you're guilty of doing something and you knew better, you knew what you were doing, so that they can have their little power fix that day. I understand always hearing people say innocently, I was just hiding under a rock because that's what I do in reality. That probably gets old after a while. But no, really, this is literally what you would do and should do. Any game engine that punishes you for doing everything that a person would logically do in reality when you're trying to simulate it is a bad game engine. And it's a bad game. This could have been solved a long time ago by not having it do the dumb things like, let's say, making the interior of these stones lava. Now, again, this isn't supposed to happen at all if you're on the surface that is called, if you're not aware of this surface here that's got the mostly smooth surfaces here. This is the terrain map. It's a flat sheet, manifold, whatever you want to call it, that has warps and shapes into it to form everything, including those mountains. And it does a lot of the heavy lifting to create your environment. It's the terrain. As long as you don't leave any holes in it, it's really reliable. And then these rocks are three-dimensional objects in the game that are 3D models that are just thrown on top and pressed into the ground or whatever. Where they intersect, you come up with a lot of intersect points that cause these defects in the game to show up, to become visible, to manifest themselves. It shows all of the defects and warts and all of the game engine. And that's just kind of how game engines work. And when I'm playing with a game, I always test it to see what it's going to do. Now, I'm aware of the fact that this can be used to glitch into a rock. But games I've played, if you glitch into a rock, you can't get out. Or if you could get out, some games punish you by just making the rock translucent. Suddenly light travels easier through it. People can hear you louder. They find you. And it would also make it to where the rock is easily traversed into. All it becomes at that point is a great place to hide because it visually obscures you. I guess that would be an advantage still in a game. Or they just make it to where you can't physically do it. Now, I understand a person watching the video might say, oh, this is you doing an exploit. Yeah, that would be me doing an exploit. By crawling under a rock or into a little cave to hide, that's not intentionally doing it, and it's not even plausible to claim that everybody does that. And also, it always just says you have a kick violation. It doesn't explain what the hell you did wrong. You might see, I forgot what his name is, Cameo 10 or whatever, or some other people who are admins in games. They will expend a huge amount of effort refusing to explain to you why you were kick banned. Think YouTube policy where they just vaguely do a hand wave about misinformation when it's a video of you talking about what you did that day. So it can't be misinformation. What I'm talking about here is the de facto policy most people have if they build a game or if they're an admin on anything where they have a lot of power over people and can make them miserable over something as petty as a stupid video game, where they will kick ban you because they felt like it, because they had a bad day. I mean, even, again, I don't know if it's the right name, but even Cameo 10, I think it is, labels his videos as admin abuse. So, it is. I mean, isn't it, though? And that's kind of where I'm going with this. Now, let's do a real quick thing. Hopefully this will be useful to you who play a video game. This is a spot that's one I love using. You can put, if the game engine isn't totally locked down to where it's absolutely obnoxious, you can have just enough space in here to put in a little shack. You can live in here. You get into this angle, and you put down a foundation and build a little one by one in here, and it's nice. And it eliminates the need for maybe 2 or even 3 of the walls, depending how well you position the initial foundation. You do need a roof, 4 pillars, and the foundation and the door frame and the door. But other than that, it's pretty cool. And you notice nobody really does it. The reason is that on most of them, it detects that you have over any part of the foundation these covering you. Unless you can see sky all the way up, some of these servers won't let you even put down a bag. Again, where would you hide if you were in the middle of a storm and under a survival situation? Would you hide under here in a hole to where you can keep from having, being miserable? Or would you put a little building in here? Also want to point out that as of now, on this server, it won't let me duck right here. Now, if I do that, it still won't. It took away my ability to duck down, so that I couldn't crawl under here, presumably. And then, of course, I do this. So yeah, this one's doing a bunch of things that don't happen in the game normally. This is implementing a bunch of anti-cheat functions that kick in and are not stable and are irrational and are not helpful. And again, this is the place of survival situation you build a building, or you would just simply hide under here with your sleeping bag. So I think this is a criticism of game engine based errors and screw ups that people literally for the last 10 years didn't fix. That's why I do Rust Legacy and do solo only, and hope that the admins don't bother trying to help me when they see me seemingly screw up and not know how to play the game correctly. I'm mostly running around doing things like experimenting with rounding up these animals and tricking them into getting stuck in one of the garages over there, which I did yesterday a lot of. And then immediately dealt with an admin interfering with me and not letting me do it because he said he was helping me. If you're watching, I hope I don't offend you, but you really were just interfering with me doing an experiment. But anyway, my main complaint here again is the game engine screws up, okay? Then us users get punished for it, and then admins and also the devs presume guilt on people's parts for doing something as straightforward and basic as, oh, here's a rock I can hide under. I'll build under here or just put my camp under here because it's hidden, or because I would be out of the weather if there was a weather simulation. And nope, you knew what you're doing, you're guilty. I've seen someone playing a game that was just barely released a day before be accused by an admin of trying to cheat the system by noticing there was a defect in the game. It's such a pervasive problem and a level of abuse of players that I think it needs to become a new standard that we just don't permit that in games. I think any game that does it should be tested to see if it has admin abuse enabled. If it does, they acknowledge it. Yeah, we've enabled admin abuse because we're still in testing phases. And also, dear Steam Corporation or whatever, if someone gets a ban for playing a game with a bunch of defects in it that causes false positives, permanently ban them from being able to flag anybody's Steam account. I don't use Steam for that reason. I've seen too many horror stories of people getting banned from a game and it affecting whether or not they can get on other games. Again, game engines break. Lag happens. And blaming the user for it, or blaming them for doing the obvious thing of hiding under a frickin' rock during a shootout, that doesn't make any sense, and it shouldn't be allowed to be part of the culture. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I wish you all luck with that. And yeah, this has been basically just a rant. Goodbye.